Mendel Futterfass was in jail in 1946 for the crime of helping Jews leave the workers' paradise. He was aided by other Hasidim, most notably Leibel Machkin and others. Other Israelis from the Bricha helped. But in the end, it was his determination, inspired by his Rebbe, augmented by the Chassidim, Yonah Cohen, Yonah Piltaver, but it was Mendel who actually did the work of securing the passports, tickets, schedules, of being able to get hundreds of Hasidim from Lemberg to the Western Zone, to Poland first and then to the Western Zone. And this was a heroic effort. And he was caught. And he was arrested, and he thought they would kill him. For crimes less than these, religious men were shot on the spot. The Russians wanted to know who helped him, so that saved him. So rather than shooting him immediately, they put him into interrogation for 3 years. For 3 days. During those 3 days of interrogation, intense interrogation, they put him to sleep and they wake him up a half hour later and they would have the light bulb in front of you, bright. And his only response was, I don't know anyone. I'm the only Jew that could have done this. I did everything myself. I did all the artwork. I did all the printing. I got all the money. You have me. You're not going to find anybody else because it's only me who did it. They tried from many different angles to extract information and names. Not one came from his lips. He thought for sure they would kill him. But then they handed him a sentence, 10 years. 10 years in Siberia. Well, 10 years in Siberia was a 99% death sentence, because that's what happened. 1% survived. The first year, over 90% couldn't hold out and died. But he knew he was of hardy stock. He could overcome it. But his next thoughts were about his wonderful wife, who left with a heart condition. She needed medical attention desperately. She was going to Germany, not exactly a Jewish-friendly place. And without money and without her husband, he could convince anybody. He could charm a snake out of his skin. But now she was without him, without money. A Jewess in Germany. And where was she going to get medical attention? He wanted to write a letter to the Rebbe. Where could he write a letter to the Rebbe? He had no paper or pen, and no envelope and no stamp. But he reminded himself that he could write a letter to the Lubavitcher Rebbe by thought. And so he wrote the Lubavitcher Rebbe by thought. It was around Lag BaOmer, Tafshin Vav, 1946. Many years passed afterwards. He got out of the Soviet system in 1955. Immediately went into public works for saving the Jewish child through Jewish education. Created 2 separate yeshivas. A Lubavitcher yeshiva that was clandestine and a Bukharian yeshiva, Bukharian children in the area he lived. It was also clandestine. They needed money. He raised the money for it, also clandestinely. He was living a life of extreme danger, to the point that his family, hardy family they are, asked the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, our Rebbe, if they should find a way to get him a passport with a picture with a false name, a different identity, so that he had an opportunity to get out, to be reunified with his family, and so that he would not be caught as an animal and shot to death. worse. And the Rebbe's response was interesting. He said, Mendel will go out without any problems. You don't need to send him false documents. Short while later, Harold Macmillan was declared the victor in the British elections. He was the first Labour prime minister that decided to go and meet Nikita Khrushchev, the Russian communist boss, in Moscow. Now, this was the first British prime minister to visit Moscow. I remember that story when I was a child. I didn't know it had anything to do with Mendel Futerfas. I didn't even know who Mendel Futerfas was at the time. But I later heard this from people around him, got the information. Anyway, Harold Macmillan was going to visit Nikita Khrushchev, and he was petitioned by 4 families to get their family members, their loved ones, to reunite with the rest of the family in London or in England. And of course the Futerfas family came and asked him for his intervention. Khrushchev was thrilled that a British prime minister would come and show grace, be so gracious as to come and visit in Moscow. It was the first time Churchill did not go to Moscow. Their meetings were in different places. Potsdam, Yalta, never Moscow. And so this was a first since the revolution, and for this Khrushchev was very gracious and willing to do favors, bestow favors upon the British Prime Minister. So he asked him, Prime Minister Macmillan, what can I do for you as a symbol of the friendship of our governments? The English Prime Minister said, well, among other things, I have 4 individuals who Britain would be interested in repatriating with their families. And one of them, of course, was this Rebbe Nachum Mendel Futerfas. No problem. Khrushchev didn't bother examining the papers of Mendel Futerfas. He was a legend among the Chassidim and a nemesis for the KGB. Before them, the NKVD, the NKVD. But he had promised Macmillan, and the papers were issued, and Mendel Futerfas came and was transported to Great Britain, to his home.